Good morning, guys. Yesterday, there were reports that the Minister for Interior, Dr. Fred Okengo Matiangi, disagreed bitterly with the Deputy President, William Ruto, over the tenders for the new police uniform. So today, I want us to discuss that particular incident and why I think Dr. Matiangi could actually be interested in the presidency in 2022. But before we continue, kindly remember to subscribe. This country of ours is controlled by the cartels, and these cartels can always come with any idea as long as that idea can convert into money into their pockets. So after running down all sectors, these guys then focused on the police uniform. So they sat down somewhere and they agreed that they were going to change the police uniform. And indeed they changed it. They changed it to some blue color, a color you cannot really understand why they chose it. But the main motive for that was to come up with a new tender so that they could line up their pockets with this. And after that now, Professor Matiangi, I think because of the war President Uhuru has waged against corruption, Professor Matiangi is trying to avoid that. So Professor Matiangi decided that they are not going to import or to outsource this police uniform. They are going to get them from within. And what a better place to get them than NYS. So according to Professor Matiangi, which I think is so good for the country, they want this tender to be given to NYS because NYS has the capacity and the ability to make those uniforms. But according to sources and the reports which appeared yesterday, William Ruto is also keen on this tender, either through his proxies or through himself. But Matiangi said no, right? So Matiangi said no, that over his dead body, that tender will have to go to NYS. And that's now brings us to the biggest question. The question is Matiangi interested in the presidency in 2022? Or could Matiangi be fighting William Ruto under the instructions of his boss, President Uhuru Kenyatta? Those are tough questions and we must answer them. But we are not going to answer all of those today. I'll try and focus on why I think Matiangi is interested in the presidency. Number one, we must all agree that Professor Matiangi or Dr. Matiangi is one of the most hardworking cabinet ministers we have in this country. When he was the Minister for Education, he transformed that ministry and a lot of things really changed. And even at the Ministry of Interior, one of the most difficult ministries, he has been able to perform well. And indeed, if given a chance, most Kenyans would actually prefer Professor or Dr. Matiangi as a president of this country. I'm saying this based on his recent moves. Number one, there was no need of Dr. Matiangi to take William Ruto over that particular police uniform. Matiangi is a cabinet minister. William Ruto is the deputy president of the country. They sit at a cabinet meeting. So there's no any other better place to address that particular issue, the issue of police uniform, than at the cabinet level. Even if that meeting is not possible, then Matiangi can walk to DP's office and explain to him why he feels it's important to give NYS this particular tender. But he chose the media. Why was he choosing the media? He chose the media because number one, William Ruto is regarded as a corrupt individual. Any move that seems to contradict him is actually welcomed by Kenyans. So Matiangi wanted to portray William Ruto as someone who is corrupt and himself as someone who is not corrupt. And doing it through the media in my view, was a bit irresponsible. As a minister, Matiangi ought to have chosen the other routes of government structures to address that particular incident. So in my view, I think the fact that Matiangi chose media, he was playing politics. Number two, and this I think most people do not know, Matiangi has been a politician all his entire life. When Simeon Nyachai was running for the presidency in 2002, Professor Matiangi or Dr. Matiangi was actually one of his top advisors and was his campaign manager. And remember, Matiangi was appointed to the cabinet courtesy of Nyachai's family. And in my view, I think the Nyachai's family have agreed with the Uhuru Kenyatta that Professor Matiangi should be propelled, because they tried to propel Charles Nyachai, but the guy was an unstarter. He failed completely. He's not a politician, so he failed. So it will be very difficult to resurrect Charles Nyachai to a level of national politics. But Matiangi has actually cut a niche for himself at the national level. So Professor Matiangi is now better placed to be propelled as a politician. And what a better way of saying he wants to run for the presidency. Number three, there has been talks in Kisii that Fred Matiangi wants to run for the governor. And probably what he's doing currently is raising his stake. Remember, William Ruto has been going to Kisii and Nyamira on more than 15 times. But Professor Matiangi has never accompanied him. He used to do that, but at some point he stopped. In fact, he stopped just before the handshake. I think he had realized that Uhuru and Ruto were not working very closely, and he stopped. And from that point, Professor Matiangi has never made a move. And William Ruto was in Kisii just that week on I think on Friday. William Ruto was in Kisii, yeah, and that's very significant. William Ruto was in Kisii, and on Monday now, Matiangi was hitting at him. So that tells you something, that there's actually bad blood between Matiangi and William Ruto. But what is that blood? I don't think it's something personal. In my view, I think Matiangi wants to run for the presidency, and he views William Ruto as an easy target, as someone he can easily target and gain traction. And indeed, that particular article on the Star actually trended in this country. Number four, which I think is also critical, is that there's no way Professor or Dr. Matiangi can get the courage to take on William Ruto without the support or without the approval of the boss. Remember, Dr. Matiangi is not controversial, and Dr. Matiangi is not corrupt. There's no scandal which you can put Dr. Matiangi down with. And therefore, in my view, I think is the best person who can be used by the systems or the cartels around the system to poke holes on William Ruto. Number five, in this country, people are organized according to tribes. Matiangi is a Kisii, and as at now, there's no serious Kisii who can claim to be the leader of the Kisii. In fact, Ongwai is going home. Nyangarangama is going home. So apart from Dr. Matiangi and Dagoretti North MP, Simba Arati, there's no other serious Kisii leader who can cut a niche at the national level. So Professor Matiangi, in my view, is also trying to create that space for himself. Because in politics, power is not given, so it's taken. So Matiangi, in my view, is trying to project himself as a leader of the Kisii. And if he decides to run, he will increase his stake. And he can actually land a running mate. Remember Professor Kibwana, Kenyans are pushing Professor Kibwana to run. And if he combined forces with Dr. Matiangi, that can be a formidable force. It will be a formidable force because I think Kenyans have learned that corruption in this country is what ails the country, and they want service delivery. And in my view, a combination of Professor Kivutha Kibwana and Matiangi can actually propel the country to the next level. So probably he's positioning himself. And also, if you have been very keen, Professor Matiangi has been very cozy with Raila Odinga. In fact, it is said that in most cases, Matiangi and Raila consult, even at privately in their respective homes. So he's been very cozy with him. Probably he's planning to join politics, and maybe he will take a lead in Kisii as the Kisii leader.